All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling server monitoring and cybersecurity.
Yeah, and we've got a ton of articles and some YouTube videos to really get into it.
Sometimes these topics can sound kind of like intimidating.
Oh, for sure. But honestly, this stuff is relevant to everyone. I mean, think about it. What would happen if you couldn't access any of your online accounts?
Okay, yeah. I definitely don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So, I guess server monitoring helps prevent that.
Exactly. It's like the first line of defense, right? These services are constantly checking on your servers, like making sure the CPU's not overloaded, memory's okay, that kind of thing.
So they're like always keeping an eye on things, making sure things are running smoothly.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's cool? They can actually help optimize performance too. We actually have an article here about a company that was really struggling. Their server was always maxed out. Turns out one single application was using 80% of their resources. They were able to tweak it thanks to the monitoring data.
Wow. So it's not just about preventing disasters, it's about making things run better overall.
Totally. Now, shifting gears a bit, we keep seeing this company, Delinea, pop up. They're all about cybersecurity, specifically something called PAM.
PAM-EM. Sounds kind of like a spread for toast, right?
Haha, right. But it's actually privileged access management.
Yeah.
It's basically about making sure that only the right people have access to the really important stuff. Think of it like the master key to your digital life. Bank accounts, social media, all that.
Okay, yeah, that sounds pretty important.
Right. And Delinea is doing some cool stuff. They've got this thing called just-in-time permissions, which is this idea that you only grant access when someone needs it, for a specific task.
Oh, that's smart. Instead of having a key all the time, they just get temporary access.
Yeah, less chance of something going wrong, right? They also have something called unlimited admin mode.
Unlimited? That sounds kind of, unlimitedly risky, doesn't it?
I know, right? But the cool thing is, Delinea's system tracks everything that happens in that mode, so if anything shady goes down, they know right away.
So it's like they're watching everything just in case.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty impressive. So we've got server monitoring, we've got Delinea doing all this fancy PAM stuff. What else is there? I mean, is this something that, everyday people need to worry about?
Absolutely. There's the security expert, Bert Blevins. He's got some great YouTube videos on this. He talks a lot about password rotation, how important it is to change them regularly, especially on Linux, which a lot of people use.
Ugh, password rotation. I know it's important, but it's such a pain.
I feel you. But Blevins actually has this whole guide on how to automate it in Linux specifically. He really stresses that it drastically reduces the chances of someone getting into your accounts.
Okay, maybe I should check that out. I've been relying a lot on multi-factor authentication. Isn't that enough?
Oh, MFA is great. Don't get me wrong. And Blevins, he specifically mentions Oath OTP MFA. Super secure, right? But even with that, strong passwords are still key. Not every account has MFA.
True. So we've got server monitoring, Delinea's PAM stuff, password tips. Seems like we've covered a lot of the technical side.
Yeah, but cybersecurity is way more than just the tech. It's about people, processes, creating a whole culture of security. That's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. So we're going to dive deeper into the human side of all this.
Exactly. We're going to see why people are often, the weakest link.
You know what's crazy? I was just reading this article, and it turns out this huge data breach, it wasn't even some super hacker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they just tricked an employee into giving him their login. No hacking skills required.
Social engineering. It's a classic, really. I mean, you can have all the fancy tech in the world, but human error, that's always going to be a factor.
So even if you've got all the best security measures, if someone gets tricked, it's game over.
Pretty much. Cybersecurity, it's not just about firewalls and passwords. It's about understanding, how people think, what makes them click on that link.
Okay, so it's almost like psychology plays a role.
Oh, absolutely. Attackers, they know how to push our buttons. They exploit our trust, our desire to help, even our fear of missing out.
Yeah, it's kind of scary how easy it is to get tricked, just clicking a link in an email.
Exactly. That's why we need to, raise awareness. One of the YouTube videos we watched, they talked about phishing emails, right?
Oh yeah, the ones that look all official and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But they always have these little clues if you know what to look for.
Like that thing they said about checking the sender's email address super carefully.
Yep, and hovering over links before you click. Simple stuff, but it can make a huge difference. It's about being a little skeptical, especially online.
Right. But it's not just about individuals, is it? companies need to step up too, right?
Oh, definitely. There was this article, they were talking about employee training, and it's not just about like checking a box for compliance, it's about building a whole culture of security.
Yeah, but honestly, those training sessions can be so boring. PowerPoints, endless rules.
I know, right? But some companies are getting creative, like using games to make it more fun, or they'll have like real world simulations so people can see how a breach actually happens.
That makes sense, like actually experiencing it instead of just hearing about it.
Exactly. The more engaging, the more people will actually remember and use it in their day-to-day work.
Okay, so we've talked about education, training. Are there any other, like, big trends in cybersecurity we should know about?
One that keeps coming up is this concept of zero trust. It's a pretty, well, radical way of thinking about security.
Oh, how so?
So, like, traditionally, security was all about building a strong perimeter, right? Like firewalls, keeping the bad guys out, and you assume everyone inside the network is good.
Yeah, makes sense. Like a castle with big walls and a moat.
Aha, exactly. But the problem is, attackers are finding ways to get past those walls. Plus, sometimes the threat is inside the castle already, right?
Oh, right, like employees making mistakes or even intentionally doing bad stuff.
Yep. So zero trust basically says don't trust anyone by default. Like verify everyone every single time, whether they're inside or outside the network.
So it's like constantly checking everyone's ID, even if they've already shown it before.
Yeah. Assume every device, every user could be compromised. Always authenticate, always authorize, no matter what.
I can see how that'd be super secure, but also pretty complex to set up.
It can be, but you don't have to do it all at once, right? Start with the most important stuff, like those privileged accounts, and then build from there.
Okay, so like a layered approach. But are there any downsides to zero trust?
Well, one challenge is it can create more friction for users. You know, always having to log in, prove who you are, that can get annoying. So it's about finding that balanced security versus actually being able to get work done.
All right, got to make sure people can still do their jobs without like a million login prompts.
Exactly. So having a good plan, figuring out what works for your organization, that's key. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense. We've covered so much, from phishing to zero trust. It's a lot to take in.
It is. It's a constantly changing landscape. But, you know, the more we know, the better prepared we are, right?
Right. Speaking of knowing more, we've got some great links in the show notes for anyone who wants to dive deeper. But before we wrap up, what's like the one big thing you want our listeners to remember from all this?
You know, it really is. It's not just about the tech, it's about the people using it. All this stuff we talked about, zero trust and everything, it all comes down to human behavior. I mean, you can have the best security system in the world, but if someone just writes their password on a sticky note, what's the point, right?
It's definitely right. Like all this technology, and we're still tripped up by like basic human stuff.
Exactly, but that's also what makes cybersecurity so interesting, I think. You're always trying to stay one step ahead of the bad guys, figuring out how they think, how they might try to trick people.
So it's like this constant game of cat and mouse, huh?
Oh, absolutely. And the rules are always changing. There's always something new to learn.
Yeah. Speaking of learning, one thing that really hit me during this deep dive is just how much information is out there. You know, it can be a little overwhelming, to be honest. Any advice for our listeners on how to, like, stay informed without getting totally lost?
That's a good point. There's definitely a lot out there. For me, I think it's about focusing on quality over quantity. Find a few sources you trust, you know, maybe some industry blogs, a podcast or two, those security vendor websites. They can be pretty helpful. You don't have to read every single article. Just make sure you're getting good information from reliable sources.
And it's okay to ask for help too, right? Like, if you're not sure about something, just ask your IT department or a security expert.
Yeah, definitely. They're there to help. And, you know, as we wrap up here, I want to leave everyone with one thought. Cybersecurity, it's not just about protecting data, it's about protecting people. It's about making sure we can all use technology safely and confidently without worrying about being hacked or scammed.
That's a great way to put it. It's about empowering people, not limiting them.
Exactly. That's why this is all so important. We have a responsibility to create a digital world that's safe and secure for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A big thank you to our expert for guiding us through all this, breaking down those complex topics. And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there in the digital world.